that he had more affairs?
All I can say on that is, I was getting a lot of, once I started working the story and my colleagues, Spencer and Alicia Hashan, we started reaching out to all the people we normally talk to. We heard a lot of things. And again, in this job, I kind of assume that maybe 90 to 95% of the things I hear are either, not true or only slightly true. And then I've heard a lot more since the story broke. So all I could say is there's a lot of speculation. I don't know anything that I could report right now.
Now, he asked in the press conference that he did last night, I think about an hour after your story broke, he said that he's asked the Integrity Commissioner to review the relationship.
Yeah.
What do you make of that? What do you think that'll do?
Well, I think it will just set some ground rules for what people at City Hall are allowed to do. And in our reporting in the last week or two, we had to kind of figure out, did he break any, if this, what we hear is true, did he break any City Hall rule? And when we looked at the various, the Municipal Act and various kinds of codes of conduct, it was a very gray area. There was basically language that said from the Integrity Commissioner to councillors, don't use favoritism or your position to influence somebody that you're in a personal relationship with. So I think maybe we'll get some clarity about that. Normally the Integrity Commissioner would weigh in on an official who's still elected and could, recommend that council fine them or take some kind of sanction, something that we saw with Rob Ford. In this case, the mayor is kind of untouchable. He won't be in the Integrity Commissioner's purview. But I think the mayor, while he was very careful last night to say he asked for privacy, he obviously doesn't wish any harm to the other person involved. I think this is a step to say, okay, for transparency, the Integrity Commissioner will sort of look at it and maybe say, what is appropriate and what is not. I'm assuming he's trusting the Integrity Commissioner is not going to kind of break any confidentiality or reveal anybody's identity.
So in the assessment that you and your team did of the rules, it's still very gray as to if he broke the rules.
Yeah, or if there's even really a hard, fast rule to break. We don't think there is. And I would say that I think it would be different if he was a city staffer. So it's hard for some people to understand that within a place like City Hall, there is the city manager and the people who are civil servants, and then there are political offices with political staffers. They all get a paycheck from the city, but the political staffers are, including the mayor himself and the people in his office, they have different kind of rules, and they're a bit of a different animal. Because they're subject to the whim of elections, and they just have kind of a different role. So we can say 100%, I think, for the council members, which included Mayor Tory, he was a member of the council, he was the head of council, and their staff. There are no clear rules that say, for example, the boss should not have a relationship with a junior staffer.
I look at, this era really well, the Rob Ford years. Certainly the Toronto Star City Hall Bureau knows that really well, and anyone who follows...
I lived through that, yeah.
And anyone who knows City Hall in Toronto. And I look at when John Tory appeared on the scene, when he, the brand that he brought was this idea of restoring stability and a bit of boring back to City Hall.
Yes.
Now that we've heard all of this, and we have this stunning revelation yesterday and his resignation, what do you think his legacy will be?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. I think you're right. He was, a lot of people think, he primarily got elected, or was it, the big feather in his cap when he did get elected in 2014 was he could say, I'm not Rob Ford, I'm not... He did. He did, that was 8 years ago, and I think he can argue that he did successfully get the city back on track in lots of ways. And I think he would say, and I think it's fair to say that he successfully led Toronto through the pandemic, which was a huge emergency. and where unfortunately a lot of people lost their lives. But overall, compared to many cities, Toronto weathered that storm very well. We became, in large part due to the efforts of Mayor Tory and also the medical officer of health and the public health chair, we became one of the most heavily vaccinated cities in Canada. COVID has not come back in a winter wave, and we are doing well compared to a lot of places. The city is in dire financial straits, and the mayor leads at a time when, we have a giant hole in our budget, and there was hopes that he would be able to get money from the provincial and federal government, kind of using his relationships with them. So I'd say where Toronto goes from here and how his departure affects, we don't know yet. Mm-hmm. But I would say overall, he can say that he did bring back that sense of normalcy and in lots of ways boredom, although it doesn't seem boring right now, but for a long time it was, in relative terms, back to Toronto.
Well, David, I know you've had a very busy 24 hours. I don't think that's going to end anytime soon. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us this morning.
Yeah, anytime.
David Ryder is the City Hall Bureau Chief at the Toronto Star. He broke the story of Tory's affair along with his colleagues Alicia Hasham and Ben Spur. CBC has plenty more on Tory's resignation on all platforms. Just head to cbc.ca/Toronto to read more about this and what this means for City Hall and for the city. And stay with us here on Fresh Air. CBC Toronto's Municipal Affairs reporter Sean Jeffers will join us in the next hour to look to the future and tell us and give us a picture of what is happening at City Hall right now and look to the future. Really looking forward to that chat. Toronto -4 and mostly cloudy. In Windsor, clear and -6, and in Thunder Bay, -12 and clear. Good morning, I'm Sarah McMillan. Toronto Mayor John Tory has resigned. The shocking news came Friday evening after the mayor admitted to having an inappropriate relationship with a staff member. Tory apologized for his actions, calling them a serious error in judgment.
As well, I think it is important, as I always have, for the office of the mayor not to be in any way tarnished and not to see the city government itself put through a period of prolonged controversy arising out of this error in judgment on my part, especially in light of some of the challenges that we face as a city.
Tory says the relationship ended by mutual consent earlier this year. He says it came at a time when he was spending long periods apart from his wife of 40 years to deal with the pandemic response. Tory says he will help transition the role to Jennifer McKelvey, who is now expected to become Toronto's acting mayor. His resignation comes days before the city is set to meet to vote on this year's budget, a spending plan Tory introduced and championed. And Tory's abrupt resignation is prompting strong reaction from his fellow members of City Council. Dale Manukduk spoke with one veteran councillor and another in their first term.
I feel terrible for everybody involved, but I feel very badly for our city because everyone's thrown for a loop here. It's Friday night at 8:30.
That's longtime Toronto Danforth councillor Paula Fletcher. She says John Tory had a lapse of judgment and that he has had a high moral standard on everything. Fletcher was also a sitting councillor during Rob Ford's time in office when he was plagued by controversy.
Council had to step in and be calm and cool and take the reins and show that we have the best interests of the city at heart. The budget is coming next week. It's the mayor's budget.
Fletcher says that the city of Toronto needs a strong council, not a strong mayor, referencing the extraordinary powers given to Tory ahead of his third term by Premier Doug Ford. Strong council, not a strong mayor. Sentiment echoed by first-term councillor Jamal Myers.
He had a very strong mandate. Whatever your differences with the mayor, he was very well respected on all sides. I think right now it's really just, having council come to help navigate the city through these unprecedented times.
Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
Many local groups are raising funds and gathering essential items to send to survivors of the 2 massive earthquakes that devastated Turkey earlier this week. But one group is shining a light on the people living in northwestern Syria who have also been affected. Marwa Kobiye is the executive director of the Syria Canadian Foundation. She says the people in this region were already living in poor conditions due to the civil war that has raged in the country for more than a decade.
After the earthquake hit, they don't have access to any aid support. The white helmets or the Syrian civil defense, they really are in need of equipment. They're in need of diesel to rescue the families and pull them out under the rubble.
Kobiye says the best way to support those in Syria is to donate directly to local Syrian organizations like the White Helmets or the Mulhan team. If a new electoral map is approved, Northern Ontario and Toronto will each lose a seat in the next federal election. The Electoral Boundaries Commission is out with the final version of its redrawing of electoral districts. It would see Northern Ontario represented by 9 MPs, down from the current 10, and Toronto's number of seats down to 24 from the current 25. The electoral boundaries are reviewed and redrawn every 10 years to adjust for changing demographics. The new map would see a number of boundaries redrawn, with new ridings added in Central Ontario, Brampton, and in the Oakville-Burlington area. The report next goes to a House committee for review. And that is your CBC News to 7:34. I'm Sarah McMillan. You're listening to Fresh Air on CBC Radio 1. Toronto, Hamilton, and Niagara, mainly cloudy today with a chance of flurries and clearing skies this afternoon, a high of +2. Tonight, clear with a low of -4. Tomorrow, sunny, a high of +5. In Peterborough and Kawarthas, mainly cloudy today with a chance of flurries, clearing skies this afternoon, a high of +1. Tonight, clear, a low of -7, and tomorrow, sunny, a high of +6. You're listening to CBC Radio 1, 99.1 FM in Toronto.
This is Fresh Air on Saturday, February the 11th. I'm Manjula Salvaraja. The time is 7:35, an hour earlier for the Central Time Zone. Coming up in this half hour, if you're looking for something meditative to do, but not meditation, here's a practice you could try: crocheting. The CBC's Marcia Young leaned into it after a lesson at a nightclub, of all places, and she met others like her, people yearning for craft, some calm, and good company. She'll bring us that story. Right now, John Northcott is here. Hi, John.
Morning, Angela. How are you?
I'm well. How are you? It's been such a busy day. Oh, my goodness. There's no shortage of news. What are you following at the court desk?
Yeah, this is Ontarians are really just waking up, in some cases just waking up to the news that you're following in your newscast, and we as well, because it is a story really with national implications. Canada's largest city, and the potential uncertainty there as the city struggles to recover from the pandemic and all the other issues. Covered City Hall for decades, I can honestly say that, and so it's been remarkable to see how this is unfolding, and of course a story that we're going to hear a lot more of. Our Chris Brown, along with so much of our team who are covering the earthquake in Syria and Turkey, he has the angle this morning on getting aid to Syria, and we're getting some new numbers in terms of the number of people who've been displaced in Syria by the earthquake, and it's literally in the millions. So Chris Brown on top of that, and the Super Bowl. Steve Fireman, my name will be familiar with to CBC listeners, and an interesting angle as we lead up to the Super Bowl. Thousands of media, of course, there on the ground, and those who are trying to court the media, everyone from actors to people promoting the latest products, saying, "Hey guys, while you wait for the big game, I'd like to interview me." So he's got a great angle, some great sounds coming out of that, the pre-game promotional festivities that are underway there.
Yeah, of course, because it's as much, there's the sports part of it, but then there's the school advertising, promo things with the ads.
Well beyond sports, absolutely.
Well beyond sports. Now, on a lighter note, you and I have spoken about long commutes before. Do you have a long commute to get here?
Mine's kind of a strange commute in that I walk.
Oh.
So I walk about 35 minutes at 3:30 in the morning through the darkened streets of the city, and I see all sorts of things as I go. But it's a great way to And I listen, of course, to radio podcasts and newscasts just so I'm even more up to speed when I arrive. And so, yeah, that's my commute.
Well, on a lighter note to all of the stories that you're following, I came across this. This is an article that was published in The Conversation. It's two professors of management from the U.S. They're writing about their research, and they suggest that commuting may be good for this one reason. Well, at least one reason. It gives you the time to psychologically detach yourself and give your brain a break. And what they're saying or suggesting is that when we were working remotely, people didn't have that commute. It was walking from your office or your kitchen where you had your laptop out or your computer out, just right back into your kitchen. So you had that 1 minute commute and you didn't really have the time to turn off and turn on. I find this so interesting.
I do too. Fortune magazine picked up on it as well. They had an example of a woman who worked from home and would still, at the end of her workday, sit in her car for a period of time again to provide her brain that break. It's interesting because so many discovered working at home during the pandemic, but I've always had a lot of friends who are musicians and writers, and a lot of them, even though they didn't have an office to go to, had a rehearsal space. Or I knew a writer who kept a very small room that he paid. It was basically a closet, but it allowed him to, he would put on a suit and tie and walk to this space where he would write, and which he could have done at home presumably, but no, he chose the space. He was there to work, and that's what he would do at the end of the day. Close the computer, pack up the typewriter in those days, and head home and stuff like that. So people are maybe rediscovering the importance of that separation.
Well, I think that what the researchers are saying is that we need that separation because that mental shift that you do in that time between work and home is important so you don't experience burnout.
Yes. You don't want that. You don't want your foot on the, not to create a metaphor here involving a car, but I mean, it is a sense of if you have your foot on the accelerator all the time, then you're going to burn things.
Well, there you go. And so here are their tips. You already do them, which is great. Don't think about work on that break. Carpool, socialize, read, listen to music. Take your brain elsewhere.
Well, you've got that, what is it in the U.S.? It's half an hour each way every day. Canada, the latest numbers I can find are 25 minutes a day.
The average commute.
Yeah, average commute. I think there's a lot of people, especially in the GTA, a lot longer than that. And then at the Kipling station, I see people getting off that Highway 27 bus, and many of them are working in Scarborough a lot longer than 25 minutes each way. But still, that's at least an hour. Good your health to be able to
listen to some music, chill.
Chill. That's the word. Commute and chill.
We'll let you commute back to the World Report desk. Thanks, John.
Cheers.
John will be back at the top of the hour with World Report. You're listening to Fresh Air on CBC Radio 1. The time is 7:40. And Natalia Arroyo is a violinist, composer, and a singer who blends traditional Mexican music with jazz and folk. Here's a taste of her sound. Natalia Arroyo with Suspiros. She'll be at the Foundry in Thunder Bay on Tuesday. The time is 7:45. I'm Manjula Salvaraja. You're listening to Fresh Air on CBC Radio 1 on CBC Listen app. Now, if you took up a hobby like knitting or crochet during the pandemic, you're not alone. If you didn't, you may want to. Not only is it good for your mental health, but for some it can be a way to connect to a whole culture. The host of World Report, Marcia Young, is on a journey to learn more about the benefits of knitting and crochet. She dropped by the studio earlier to tell us about that.
Good morning, Angela.
So, Marcia, you've been a knitter for a long time, but I understand that you went to an event recently that opened your eyes to the world of crochet.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
It was called The Art of Crochet in Jazz, so picture this. It is a scene with the exact cool of an all-black rom-com from like the 90s. So we open the door to this perfect date night, and it's just one step up off a very lonely old main street in the west end of Toronto. So this hood seemed to promise, just warehouses and storage spots. But inside this low-rise brick building is this Japanese-inspired listening bar. So everything about tonight feels really underground. There's a jazz trumpeter, his name is Chemist. He's accompanied by a DJ, and this totally sets the tone. So people show up to have pricey cocktails, of course, Japanese beer, and on this night to crochet. So the tables have these neat little baskets of yarn and crochet needles and scissors. And then we meet Legend. His company, Legend Knits, is putting on this event, and he tells us by the end of the night we're gonna have made shoelaces. So a lot of people are really totally new to crochet here, including myself. So they're a bit skeptical, but willing and open. It's a Saturday night, and that's how the night unfolds. The DJ spins, Chemist accompanies, he looks cool, and Legend teaches us all how to crochet.
What an evening! Oh my goodness. So let's go back a little bit. What was the goal of the event?
Well, it's really to help people to connect to roots and culture, the roots and culture of crocheting. Legend learned how to knit when he was about 19 years old from a Rastafarian man in Trinidad. And, he wanted to elevate sneakers and hoodies and things that could be name brand, but special. He calls it evolving from luxury to royalty. So the art of crochet is about the stitches and the finished product, but it's also about embracing lineage, embracing sustainability, and creativity.
It's interesting. So you say that you've knitted before, and here you are, you're trying crocheting for the first time. Is crochet a skill that you can really learn in one night?
Absolutely you can. I even surprised myself, so as a knitter, I pick up the crochet needle and I think to myself, where's the other one? Me too. But crochet, it's one needle and technique, and he starts us off, Legend started us off with a very basic stitch that just creates a chain, and that's how you begin. And this basic stitch is amazing for shoelaces. There were a lot of newbies there. And
so you weren't the only one?
I was not the only one, and it was a fantastic opportunity to laugh and get close to people and help them with the one thing that you knew, and they'd help you with the one thing that they knew. And by the end of the night, everyone was talking about how calm and meditative the process had become. We also met a couple of people who learned to crochet from Legend several months ago. They were making much more than shoelaces. I spoke to one guy, he's a skateboarding welder, Trey, and he learned to crochet with Legend. Then he went to Jamaica and found himself with a lot of time on his hands, so he made beanies and bags and all kinds of things. Another girl told us that she learned to crochet and she used it as a way to spend less time on dating apps. So once she broke that bad habit, she was able to crochet an entire, get this, queen-size blanket. Imagine how many bad dates she avoided.
I know. There you go. I love that. Now, what's interesting about this is, I listened to all the different people that you met there that day, and I wonder if, yes, they want to learn this new skill, but is part of but also this opportunity to meet new people and be around other people.
Absolutely. It's community, and it's a way to connect to people that you may know or brand new people with whom you can share an interest. And that's a whole big part of it too.
So tell us a little bit more about Legend. I went to his website, and he seems to be, working on all sorts of things. He's even got shoes that he's made into these beautiful, beautiful things that people can put on. So tell me a little bit more about what he does.
Legend is fly. I'll start with that. He's an incredibly inspiring artist. He is making really ordinary objects interesting using crochet and bringing out the signature aspects of these shoes or sweatshirts. And he's doing that to bring it back to culture and to make it special.
I saw also this beautiful chair that he had on his website, and I think it was perhaps a sample he had made for someone, but he had actually crocheted the back and the portion that you sit on with really colorful yarn. Stunning. The other thing that comes to mind when I think about crocheting is something that I've heard people talk about, which is what it does to your brain. Now, I hear that that's something that you looked into. What did you learn?
Absolutely. That's one of my favorite things about crocheting. I spoke to Sarah Mackay, who is a neuroscientist in Australia, and she says she does not know of any real study involving MRIs that actually tracks exactly what's happening in your brain, but researchers have surveyed enough people to know there are several things going on. So one, there's a brain-body connection happening, so that repetitive motion with the crochet needle or the knitting needles even is rhythmic and it's calming. So Mackay calls this a way of actively practicing mindfulness. And in these times, that is not a bad thing at all. It's a slow down and sort of be with yourself and understand what you're doing and just take time and breathe. So the other thing is this feeling of accomplishment that comes when you are learning something new or when you create something. So imagine doing all that work and then having these sweet shoelaces that are so practical. I love a practical thing. That sense of agency and mastery makes people feel really good. Mackay says it's not exactly a hit of dopamine, but it's the same neural pathway. And then 3, you can't discount the value of social connection. That's what it's all about for Legend. And that comes from meeting people, and you're doing a craft together. You're learning something new in a supportive environment with people with whom you're sharing the experience. So let's hear from Sarah Mackay.
So there's that social aspect, and typically it's not a very threatening or scary or high pressure environment. Knitting is kind of soft and warm and fuzzy. And many people have a lot of really lovely, warm, fuzzy memories associated with learning to knit or craft when they were kids, perhaps from their nan or their grandmother or their mother or their aunties. And there's quite a warm, soft kind of autobiographical memory aspect to that. When people pick up knitting needles, perhaps they haven't done that for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they're like, oh, I remember.
So basically, if you pick up the needles and tap into that flow and it feels good, just keep doing it. That's what the doctor says.
I'll say this. You've convinced me. You know how busy it is in the newsroom, and we all need these things to kind of slow down. I love this idea. But you're already a knitter.
Yeah.
And here you've tried a little sample of crochet. Was there anything that surprised you about the difference between these two arts?
Probably the ease at which you could get something to look right with crochet. My laces look pretty good, at the second pass, where my knitting, there are some days I just have to put it down and walk away.
Take out the stitches. Got it.
That's the worst part. To undo, there are people who can undo a little bit easier than I can, but it's always a bit of a troubling moment.
That's easy. So you see crochet as almost being easier to deliver something.
No, I wouldn't go there. No, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to pick any fights. I'm just going to say that I managed to get it to look okay on the first pass.
So what's next for you? What are you going to crochet next? Is this a thing that's going to stay with you?
Well, I've had some demand for my laces. I see where I can improve, and I'm going to do some laces, and I'll stick to that for a little while.
Okay, well, put me on the waiting list then. I could use these gorgeous laces. I could use a pair as well. Marcia, thank you for this. This is wonderful. I love hearing that people pick up new things like this. And the great thing is you've also met this interesting group of people around it too. But thank you for bringing us the story.
Pleasure.
That was my conversation with the CBC's Marcia Young. If you want to attend a Leggin Knits event, you're in luck. There's one this afternoon. It's called The Art of Crochet, and it's on at the Bata Shoe Museum in Toronto. It goes from 1 to 3 p.m. And there's also another one in 2 weeks on February the 25th. And if you're a fan of the needle arts, we want to hear from you. Are you team knitting or team crochet? And what's a knitting or crochet project that you've made that you're most proud of? Drop us an email, send us a photo if you have a photo of something that you're looking at that you love, or perhaps even something that you hate. We'd love to know. You can email us freshair@cbc.ca, and that email again is freshair@cbc.ca.